need to cut these points, and you make it quick. Here again, this is another jump cut.
It's not.
And you can see it's absolutely disturbing. They drive me crazy. Instead of a dissolve, which I'll show you what a cross dissolve looks like.
It's not.
Cross dissolve doesn't look good because their face is dissolving into their own face, and it's just way distracting. But a dip to black is really good. So let's go to our effects, and you'll see in the effects there's audio transitions and video transitions. Twirl that down and you'll see things like motion, cube spin. Don't use that, really bad, yucky. Dissolves, there's a cross dissolve, dip to black. And instead of going all the way down here, this is kind of like the same search that we did for importing our media. If I type D-I-P, dip, there's dip to black, so I don't have to go all the way down. On the right, you'll notice that this is also GPU accelerated if you have a fast enough GPU. If you don't, it's still going to be fine, but there is a little boost in there. So now you can drag this all the way over and drop it in. So watch this. And if you want to shorten that, because I think dips to black should be really short. Oh, not that short.
It's not.
If you double click on it, you'll get an actual number. So let's say 20 frames. And the way to read this is hours, minutes, seconds, frames. So obviously you don't want this to be hours. It's now 20 frames.
It's not.
Boom. It hides the jump cut, and it's a cleaner way to work. So if you have to have jump cuts, at least put a dip to black. You can have a dip to white instead. A dip to white is the same as a dip to black, except it dips to white. Just a creative idea. You can't change that color. It's either or, dip to white or dip to black. Now, I want to show you adding that to a bunch of clips. So I'm going to grab a new sequence. And again, let's images. And I've got that folder full of images. So watch this. I'll drag that whole folder into the timeline, / key. And now I've got a bunch of images, and they're just cutting one after another. Again, I'll double click to make that a little larger. There's a keyboard shortcut that I told you about, Command D on the Mac, Control D on Windows, which is apply the default transition. If you select more than one clip and hit that, now you're blending between each one of these. If you add movement on top of that, remember the scale and position on top of that. So this is my example with music. So each one has a little scale and or position change with a dissolve over top of music. Pretty simple, and it just brings it to life. We've also experienced these pan and scan kind of examples. And if we click on any one of them, we'll see the keyframes here. Now I've got a tutorial about more natural animations. I'll link to that there, and that will give you smoother animations if you want. But this is a separate sequence from our rough cut. But if we wanted to, we could bring that in right to here. So let's say that we want the images in here and we want everything to move down, including the music. So I'll hit Command-Shift-K, Control-Shift-K. I now cut everything from top to bottom, regardless of how many tracks I've got, as long as they're not protected. This is the sequence here. I'll drag this in, and I'll hold down the Control key or the Command key. See how that adds those little arrows? And it pushes everything down, and now we've got our images showing up inside. So this is a nested sequence, and you can see it's colored green, and that's different from this. Everything in this images, I guess I should have named one something different. If you double click on this, you'll see all of the images in here. So this is a sequence nested into another sequence. This is really useful. I've got a tutorial about how to use this in a creative way. So you can apply transitions on a single clip. You can apply it on multiple clips. If you apply it on its own clip, like this over here, and I hit Control D, Command D, it actually puts a transition on the beginning and the end of the clip for you. So if you don't have an edit point, it puts them on both. If you have an edit point, it'll do that. So if you have the white triangles and you drop in a transition, you'll get a warning that because there's nothing after the triangle, it will have to duplicate all of the media. Again, I've got a whole tutorial about that in the white triangles. All right, transitions, editing, keyboard shortcuts. And again, you can go through all the transitions. Just be tasteful, be judicious. Don't just use any of them. Don't use the page peel. Dear Lord, and spinning weird-ass stuff. It can make your stuff look really cheap and distracting if you start using lots of those. Okay, so that is markers and transitions. Let's go have a look at audio in the next part. All right, so you keeping up? Good? Learning lots, I hope. Wonderful. Thanks for sticking with this. Now let's get into the subject of audio. Audio can be a bit of a tricky subject, especially if you've recorded the audio yourself and it's not very good and you have to fix it. If you've got good audio, then the work in Premiere Pro is a lot easier. So let's look at both of those, fixing audio and also just enhancing audio. There's a whole bunch of effects that come inside Premiere Pro to help enhance audio, boost it, make it louder, and remove things like echo and noise. So we're going to look at that and the two different mixers that are in Premiere Pro. Okay, so let's talk about the tracks, because right now we've been dealing with stereo tracks. If we go back to our other sequence, you can see that this track has two of these waveforms in it, and this one also has two waveforms. These are called standard tracks. A lot of people will call these stereo tracks, but Premiere Pro just calls them standard because a standard track in Premiere Pro can contain both stereo and mono in one track. It's not right or wrong or good or bad, it's just the capability. Let me show you what it looks like when we have a mono track in here. Here's a mono clip, and I've opened it in the source monitor. You can see there's only one waveform. I also want to show you I've got no tracks down here for audio, but if I drag this in, a new track will be created for me. And if I open this up, you can see Premiere Pro created a standard track for me. It did not create a mono track when I dragged a mono clip in. And it'll play and it'll be in the middle. And this is another thing a lot of people don't understand is they hope that if they add a mono track, you can hear it in both ears. That's what mono is. These are stereo earbuds. You've got stereo headphones or stereo speakers. When you stick a mono track in, it plays equally on both sides. It sounds like it's in the middle. If you wanted to, I'm going to delete this track and I'll right-click and choose Add Tracks. If I choose Add Track, it'll make another stereo or standard track. I'll choose Add Tracks. I want 0 video tracks. And I want to show you that you can add a 5.1 surround sound, adaptive, or mono. We're just going to add a mono and we'll add it after audio 1. Click OK. And you'll notice that it has this little speaker icon and a standard track doesn't. So if I drag this in here, this is now a mono clip playing in a mono track. The little speaker is a way for you to see whether you're using mono or standard tracks. To be honest, in Premiere Pro, I just let Premiere Pro make all the tracks for me. I don't have I don't have requirements for things like mono, but just to let you know, worlds like the broadcast world, there are a lot of workflows where They don't want anything but mono tracks in. But for a lot of new users, just let Premiere Pro create the right track. Next up is the idea of volume. And you'll see that our audio tracks have these lines. And if you mouse over, you'll see that the volume level is 0 dB. Over on the right, I'm just going to play this so you can see
my
this.
phone more than a couple of times.
Picked up by the microphone. So you'll see that it starts down here at the bottom and goes to 0. These are all minus numbers. So you don't count from 0 to 100 in Premiere Pro for audio. In fact, in most digital settings, audio is always calculated at the top being 0, because if you go past 0, then it will crackle and pop and distort, and you don't want that. You want it fairly loud, but not popping above that. So these lines are your volume controls. If you want something louder, you just drag that up or drag it down. Another way to do this is with the audio clip mixer. And you'll see that when I move this up and down, it's going to move that up and down. Now, the interesting thing about the audio clip mixer is it has to do with where the playhead is. So you can see this is audio 1, A1. This is audio 2. I don't have a fader in here until the playhead is over top of it. Now I can do that. So you can either move the line or change the fader for per clip. But I want to tell you that that's a lot of work. The balancing of the audio can be done inside Premiere Pro fairly automatically. But if I was going to give you my suggestion, I use a separate program called Alex Audio Butler, and I have a whole tutorial on that. You literally drop it into the mixer and you let it do all its work. It uses artificial intelligence, and it just makes the whole audio track, the balancing. It doesn't do things like remove noise or reverb, but it balances things perfectly. It's as if an audio engineer worked on your track. But we're not going to, I'll show you applying that in a second, but there's a lot of tools in Premiere Pro. So let me get rid of this mono track for now. And also go over to the window menu and show you the audio track mixer. So the audio track mixer controls the volume of the whole track. So if I change this, it's not going to change that line. That's because you're looking at clip information. So each one of these clips has its own volume setting. The track itself is on top of that. So if I turn this all the way down and hit play, you won't hear anything. As I turn it up,
Protection, and it saved my phone more than a couple of times.
So it's an easy way to overall adjust the whole track. I've got tutorials on automating that. So you could actually add automation so the faders are moving up and down. That's way beyond a beginner's course, but that's one of the options. Up at the top, you'll notice a pan knob too. So if I play this and we pan, it'll echo all over the place, and it actually smears together. That's what you hear when you hear room tone. So that's the ability to pan from left to right. So you can place audio sources all over the stereo spectrum. It sounds pretty cool. Now below all of the tracks is another track, and that's the mix track. That's what this is here. It's the mix track. Up in the track mixer, you'll also see the same mix track. This controls everything, and you can see it goes above 0. I would recommend you never touch that volume. Instead, you work on the tracks themselves and leave that at 0 dB. Otherwise, you could end up with something being too quiet or too loud on the way out. It's just best to leave the mix track alone. So let's talk about working with effects. So listen to this clip.
So to sum up this review, I love this phone case and I definitely recommend it. I love it because of the bulk that it gives my phone, and it's...
So you can hear there's a hiss in there. And this one, audio echo all over the place, and it actually smears together. That's what you hear when you... So that clip of me, I recorded using the microphone on my DSLR so you can hear it bouncing all over the room. So let's go have a look at the effects. The effects are in this line here. They might be hidden behind and you look for your little double arrows. And if we look into the effects, you'll see audio effects. Control that down, and they're divided into categories. Amplitude and compression, so you've got things to amplify the sound. And then you'll notice some things that you might not be familiar with. A de-esser. What is a de-esser? Well, sometimes some people have, it's called sibilance. They have too much of a sizzle on their S, and this can remove that. It's very useful. There's compressors, delay and echo, bunch of filters, modulation, noise reduction, and restoration. Oh boy. Well, let's look at this one, denoise. And just like the other effects, with this clip selected, if I double click on this, watch what happens in the effects controls. It shows up in here. You don't really see much. You've got to click on this edit button, and now you'll see what it does. So let's just play that.
So to sum up this review, I love this phone case and I definitely recommend it. I love it because of the bulk that it...
So you'll hear the noise, the hiss is completely gone. It does affect the voice a little bit, but not enough that you would recognize this. In fact, on my show, I removed the hiss of my fan on my laptop, and there's a projector on the floor behind me projecting that image on the wall. There's a lot of fan noise, and I have a boom mic right above me. So I add that to my track mixer, actually. Let me play this, and I'll turn it on and off.
So to sum up this review, I love this phone case, and I definitely recommend it. I love it because of the bulk that it gives my phone, and it's actually...
So it's very simple. You apply it, and you can turn the amount up or down. Now, I do want to give a shout out to a company called Sonos. This is actually their technology inside Premiere Pro. So if you want more advanced, fine-tuned controls for working with audio, I'll have a link in the description to Sonos. Okay. So let's go listen to this guy, and let's stick the de-reverb on there. Same thing, I'll double-click. Edit, audio echo all over the place, and it actually smears together. That's what, and there, if you click on this little presets, there's a couple of choices, heavy or light reverb. I'm going to choose heavy reverb reduction. That's what you hear when you hear room tone, and that's why it's so difficult to be able to fix that. And you've got a slider. I can turn this down. That because it's not a simple reflection. It's actually a bunch of sound waves smearing together by the time they you can turn it all the way up. Mouth, hit all these surfaces, and then get picked up. So you're walking a fine line between changing the audio quality overall. There's a certain tonality that happens. It's almost like a metallic kind of effect if you push that too far. And you really have to set your expectations. You're never going to get the sound of audio on a busy city street to sound like somebody recorded it in a quiet recording studio. That will never happen. Way too many people think that you can push a button and do that. You can't. You know what Hollywood does when they record on the street? They re-record everything later and they match the speaking. That takes a lot of work to do that. You don't want to do that. But this can really save you if you have been given a file that you have to fix, or maybe you recorded it poorly. You can fix it with things like de-reverb. Okay, so you can add all of these effects. So look at more of the effects. So you can add reverb. You can add other things in here like distortion. These are useful. Fill left with right and fill right with left. Remember I showed you the two waveforms? Sometimes for whatever reason you recorded on your camera, but the recording only put the voice or the dialogue or something in one side. You can use this to fill the other side. That's a useful one. And there's others for stereo imaging. You can expand the stereo. You can also shift the pitch. That is adding an effect to a clip. You can also add it to a track. So in the window menu, if we open up our audio track mixer, if you twirl this little thing down, it's easy to miss that. Twirl that down and then move over to the right, and you can see you've got a number of slots in here. Click in here. All of the same effects I just showed you are available as a track effect. So we could go to the noise reduction, denoise, double click on that, and let's choose light noise.
It's actually a two-piece case, so there's more protection.
So that's going to eliminate the noise on the whole track instead of one effect for each one of those tracks. The benefit to doing it in the track is you can change one effect instead of changing it over and over again. Because if you did apply this to, let's say, 50 different clips, you now have to change that in 50 different places. It's way easier to do that in the track mixer. And this is also where I would add Alex Audio Butler. So I have a whole tutorial on that where I would use it for voice. Double click on that. Tell it to use a constant source and natural. That's what you're hearing with my voice. You're hearing Acusonos remove the noise, and then Alex Audio Butler balances all the audio compression levels automatically for me. I love it. It's fantastic. I also want to show you the workspace up at the top that Adobe gives you. And here it is. It's called Audio. And when you click on that, it opens up the Audio workspace. And what you'll get is this new panel called the Essential Sound panel. Adobe has done a really good job making this easier for you when it comes to a bunch of audio effects applied. So let's go back to our rough edit. And I'm going to apply effects to these clips. And I'm going to use the Essential Sound panels. So what the Essential Sound panel wants you to do first is to select a clip or clips and then tag it. So I showed you a tool before called the Track Select Forward. Remember, it's the A key that selects it. If you hold the Shift key down, it's going to select all of these audio clips for me. So tap the A key, hold Shift, and click. So now I've selected all of the audio clips for the interview. Now in the Essential Sound, I will choose whether this is dialogue, music, sound effects, or ambience, and I'll choose dialogue. And then pick a preset like balanced male voice and hit play.
Into photography at a very early age and realize that the world is...
And you'll notice here, reduce noise is a possibility. So I could click on reduce noise.
It's quite the place to take photos and to explore.
And if we open up repair by itself, there's reduce reverb too. So they've put them all on a slider. So this is Adobe's way of simplifying all of the effects. It is a good way to work. Again, I try to keep on the track mixer because what you've just done is if you've applied one of the tracks and we go to the effects, you've applied denoise, vocal enhancer, graphic EQ, dynamics processing, and de-esser. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, let's say you had 50 clips. Well, you do the math. That's a lot of effects that are applied. Now, if you stay in the Essential Sound, you can move those sliders and affect all of them. So that's one way to work. Again, I prefer to do this all in the track mixer. So if I want to remove that, up in the top right, clear audio type, and hopefully they're removed. Yes, they're removed. I'm going to go back to my editing workspace. And open up images. Remember, this was our slideshow. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about quickly is voiceovers, recording your own voice directly into Premiere Pro. When you do that, you're going to want to use headphones or earbuds or something, because if you don't, the microphone will pick up the rest of the audio and it will create a problem. So the room needs to be quiet and you're only listening to your voice. So I've got earbuds in, I don't have my audio playing. So let's go look over here. You'll notice the little microphone icon. Before I click on that, right click in the same area and choose voiceover settings. And here you can see what you can name this. So I can name this Colin VO. I could pick the microphone that I'm using. I can choose a pre-roll and a post-roll. I'll turn the post-roll off. The pre-roll will count in 3 seconds and then it will start automatically recording. And you'll see there's the level right there, and that's because I've picked the right microphone. If you don't see that level, then Premiere Pro doesn't know what your settings are. You need to go to the Preferences, Audio Hardware, and pick your microphone. So I'm going to move this right here, and I'll push this button. It's going to count down, and then I'll start recording my voice. So these are some beautiful images that were taken by Jonathan through his travels through the years. And when I hit stop, you'll see it's recorded my voice. I'll just solo that. That S button is for solo. So these are some beautiful images that were taken by Jonathan. And if you look over on the left-hand side, remember I named mine voiceover, and there it is. So it's recorded a new clip and put it inside there. Notice I did